Good afternoon, everyone. We are now in Judges chapter 12. One of the things that we find in Judges chapter 12 is that there is a repeat with regards to the men of Ephraim. Now, this word here, the men of Ephraim, actually reads as the man of Ephraim. And one of the reasons why it is said that this is used in the singular is that all the men of Ephraim is acting as one. This is a repeat actually of a problem that the Ephraimites, people from Ephraim, thinks that they are better than everybody else in the northern kingdom. That the Ephraimites are the ones that is supposed to be the de facto leader. Back in Judges chapter 8, when when Gideon was fighting, back in chapter 8, Gideon was fighting the Midianites. And after that battle in the north, Gideon invited the people from Ephraim to join in with the chase of the Midianites, the people from the east. And the people from Ephraim was very upset with Gideon. Why did you not involve us? Now in chapter 12, this is a repeat of that same jealousy that the people of Ephraim is very upset with Yiftach. Now, in chapter 11, you find that Yiftach became the commander of the armies of Gilead from Manasseh, and then eventually he becomes the commander of much of the armies in Israel. However, he lived in Mitzpah, which is in the midst of Ephraim. And so the men of Ephraim, they gathered together, they crossed over towards Zaphon, and that would be the eastern side of the Jordan, and it came to Yiftach. And just like they complained about Gideon, Yiftach is the object of their complaint. Now, the contrast here that we would see is when you go back to Gideon in chapter 8, Gideon was very wise in handling the situation. Yiftach, on the other hand, is a bit crude. And so the complaint is this: why did you cross over the fight against the people of Ammon, and you did not call us to go with you? And they were upset because they weren't invited to join in the fight. Now, the people of Ammon backed off and they ran off, and Yiftach was able to wrap up the war without anyone from Ephraim. And so these people of Ephraim came with one voice and says, we will burn your house down with you, on you with fire. And they are that mad, they're that angry with Yiftach, even though Yiftach had actually repelled the people of Ammon. So now we read Yiftach's reply to them, very different from how Gideon had replied. He said, my people and I, the Gileads, were in a great struggle with the people of Ammon. When I called you, you did not deliver me out of their hands. Now think of it this way. Back in Judges chapter 10, we find that they were under the Ammonites, right? Under the people of Ammon for 18 years. And nobody from Ephraim wanted to fight the Ammonites. So in that 18 years, we find that Yiftach had struggled. And then in verse 3, we then see, so when I saw that you would not come and give me help, I took my life in my hands and crossed over against the people of Ammon. So in this case, we find that Yiftach had decided that since you don't come to us, and for 18 years, we have had this predicament that I am on my own. I went up against them. And then I had discovered that Jehovah had delivered them into my hand. So the question is this: why then have you come up to me this day to fight against me? Why are you contending against me? We are all brothers in the northern country. Yiftach had gathered together all the men of Gilead, and they decided to have a civil war and fought against Ephraim. Now, this is a civil war. The difference between Gideon was able to diffuse and explain to the men of Ephraim, you are doing a much bigger work than we are at the valley of Jezreel. But with 300 men, Gideon overpowered the Ammonites. But the Ephraimites just could not let go. But yet, Gideon, in his wisdom, was able to handle them. Yiftach, on the other hand, decided as a brash, unlearned man. So he gathered the men of Gilead, and then he started to fight against Ephraim. Now, this word fight is to wage war. And this is a civil war. Within the northern kingdom, Manasseh on the east fought with Ephraim on the west. The interesting thing is the men of Gilead under Yiftach defeated Ephraim. And this is because of what the Ephraimites are saying. The Ephraimites tell the people of Gilead, says, you Gilead are fugitives of Ephraim, and this fugitive of Ephraim is really understood as the lowest or the refuse of Ephraim. Among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites, so this is really very much a ridicule. And by ridiculing Yiftach, and Yiftach is not a person to be ridiculed, Yiftach took up men and fought and defeated the Ephraimites, because the Ephraimites were calling the Gileadites, Gileadites, who lived among the Ephraimites as well as in Gilead on the eastern shore, as the lowest, the refuse, the unwanted of Ephraim. The Gileadite sees the fords of the Jordan before the Ephraimites arrive. Now, what does that mean? It means that there is the Jordan River, and there was a place where they call a ford, where they could actually cross over. And we have Gilead on one side and Ephraim on the other side. And so the story here tells us that whenever any Ephraimite wants to cross over, the men of Gilead would say to him, are you an Ephraimite? And if he said no, then there would be a test. Now, what is this happening is, remember, the men of Ephraim crossed over towards Zaphon. And what that would mean is that the Ephraimites were already on this side and they're trying to go back to the other side of the shore. Now, that is what we are seeing. So the Gileadites are managing these locations, right? And it's to prevent people from running back to Ephraim. They were to test the people coming over. They said, let me cross over. And they asked, are you an Ephraimite? And when they say no, then they would say to him, then say these words. And this word in verse 6, in verse 6 itself, you will find that they are trying to test them to say what this means is a grain of wheat. A grain of wheat. And the way to pronounce this by the Gileadites is uh, is Shibolet. And this Shibolet is how the people from Gilead would say it's a Shibolet. And that would be the emphasis of the SH, sh. But if this person who says that he is not an Ephraimite, he would say Sibolet. And that is an emphasis on the S, the S, instead of the sh. And this is by way of a dialectal difference that they could not pronounce the sh. And then they would take him and kill him at the fords of the Jordan. And there fell at that time 42,000 Ephraimites. So this civil war cost 42,000 lives when the Ephraimites came to Yiftach and humiliated him and laughed at him and treated him like a nobody. The civil war was really a rash person defending his honor. And by this test of the language or the speech, a difference between a s and a sh, and thereby thereafter 42,000 people died. Now, in this particular civil war, we find that Yiftach judged Israel 6 years. That's all. He lost his daughter. 42,000 Ephraimites died. They had a contention from Ephraim. And then Yiftach the Gileadite died. And he was buried among the cities of Gilead. Now, one of the suggestions was saying, why was he buried in the cities and not the city? So this is in plural. And tradition has that his limbs were all buried in a number of cities. Now, this is apparently from tradition, saying that the end of Yiftach seems to be very low. He lost his daughter. The respect for him was not like Deborah, and although he had accomplished quite a lot in that 6 years, overpowering the Ammonites, ending an 18-year oppression, he had to start a civil war, and many, many more people died. And in so doing, he was not well liked. And that is why the text seems to suggest that he was buried among the cities of Gilead, in the sense that pieces of him were buried in different places. Now, this is a short chapter. And so we are in verse 8. After Yiftach. Now, after Yiftach, although it says after, there is also the and then. After Yiftach died, and after his judging, then we have a person by the name of Ifzan. It is pronounced as Ifzan. And he's from Bethlehem, from Judah, and he judged Israel. Now, understand the idea of judge. It's not so much that he is just a judge sitting around judging cases. In this book of the Judges, it is the description of a leader that is raised up to lead the people under God. That God is their king, and the judges are the ones that will lead them into whatever war. And of course, they also did some judging. Now, Ifzan is known to be very wealthy in the sense that he has 30 sons, 30 daughters, and he had given the 30 daughters in marriage. Now, this word gave away. He sent this word here is sent outside. Sent outside 30 daughters. Now, what does that mean? Gave away or sent outside means that Ifzan married out his 30 daughters. So what he has is 30 sons, 30 daughters. And in so doing, this 60 children is seen as wealth of Ifzan. And then not only that, he brought in 30 daughters from elsewhere for his sons. So what you find is that all 60 children of Ifzan were married. And that seems to be an indication of blessing to Ifzan. And we're told he judged Israel 7 years. But we're not told actually what happened during that 7 years. With Yiftach, that 6 years that he judged Israel, so many things happened. But in these 7 years, it seems that nothing much happened. And then later on in verse 10, he says, and then Ifzan died, and he was buried at Bethlehem, not in the cities of Gilead, like Yiftach. So one of the things we're told, very briefly, Ifzan is very rich in the sense that he's got 60 children, and they were all given in marriage. The daughters were given away in marriage. The sons were all married. So he had a good life in that sense. And so since nothing much is written, then we're not in the know of what else transpired. Now, according to uh, oral traditions from the Jewish community, they seem to suggest that Ifzan was Boaz. Now, I'll leave that to you, but this is the hearsay that many people seem to suggest that Ifzan is Boaz. We don't know, and this is from traditions of ancient people. So this just for your information only. Now, verse 11, same thing. After him means, and then after Ifzan, then we have another judge. And I guess the judge here uh, is Elon. Now, Elon in this sense is a name from Zebulun, and then he judged Israel. And he judged Israel 10 years. And Elon, the Zebulunite from Zebulun, uh, or Zevulun, he died. Uh, he was buried at uh, Ayalon in the country of Zebulun or Zevulun. That is how it's said in the Hebrew, Zevulun. So we find that here nothing much was said for 10 years. So he did something, but we have no idea what exactly that Elon had done. We don't even know his family. But with Ibzan, 60 children, that was a lot. That was a lot. After him, in verse 13, same thing. And then we have this person, Avdon. Avdon, the son of Hillel, the Pir Atoni, the Piranotite, the Piratonite, judged Israel. Now we're told he had 40 sons, 30 grandsons, and these 70 people rode on 70 young donkeys. We are also told that all of them did work together. And he judged Israel 8 years. Now, among the four judges in chapter 12, Yiftach, Ibzan, Elon, Avdon, all the three, Ibzan, Elon, and Avdon, judged Israel much longer than Yiftach. But Yiftach had given us a lot more to remember by. In this case, now we have 40 sons and 30 grandsons. This is some 70 people, which also tells us Avdon is rich. And then in verse 15, and then after 8 years, and then Avdon, the son of Hillel, the Paratoni, he died and he was buried in Piraton, in the land of Ephraim, in the mountains of the Amalekites. So what we are told is we have three other judges after Yiftach, and it ended without us knowing very much of what had happened. Now, in the past, whenever we see verses like this, we are given to understand that God has found that there is nothing worthy to record whatever transpired in those periods of time. And we don't need to ask too much because God had decided that there is no need for us to know about what happened. Now, with this, we come to the end of our chapter today, chapter 12. Short chapter with some disastrous event, with Yiftach uh, starting a civil war with the men from Ephraim, killed so many of them. This is a problem. When this happened, 42,000 men of Ephraim died, and that number is an incredibly large number. But the Gilad, the Yiftach himself from Manasseh, from the eastern part of Manasseh, and that part of the country, we will find that those people are warriors. And that was why they were given the eastern part to defend the western part whenever you have enemies coming in from that side. And so Yiftach was a warrior. The rest of them, Ibzan, Elon, and Avdon, nothing much was written except that they had a lot of children. And we don't need to speculate anymore. Now, next week in chapter 13, we have a contrast of a judge. And in so doing, we will then go through the following chapters to understand the importance of the next judge. Now, with this, we come to the end of our session today.